Okay. So in the last class we have discussed about inter-process communication mechanisms. In those we have covered shared memory concept. Now we are going to discuss about message passing. So before going to discuss about the next topic, so what is for inter-process communication? What is for inter-process communication?
One process can communicate with another process,
Right.
which are called cooperative processes. Use IPC for communication.
Okay. And the next one, there are two types of techniques, mechanisms under inter-process communication. The first one is a shared memory, and the second one is a message passing. So in the shared memory, we have covered producer-consumer problem. In the case of message passing techniques, we need to talk about the two primitives. What are those two primitives? These are the two primitives we are using in the message passing mechanism. The first one is send message, and the second one is the receive message. Send message used to send a message to the process, and receive message is for receiving the message from the process, right? So these are the two operations or primitives we are using in the case of message passing mechanism. So under the message passing mechanism, the first topic we need to cover is uh, naming, right? Under the naming we have direct indirect communication, symmetry or asymmetric communication, automatic or explicit buffering, send by copy, send by reference, fixed size and variable size messages. So usually fixed message, if the messages are fixed size, then it is very simple for the operations for sending and the receiving. But if it is a variable size messages, so it will be the little more complex than fixed size messages, right? So mainly we need to talk about direct communication and then indirect communication. So the first one is a direct communication. This one also we have covered. So the first one is send, try to observe the highlighted points. Send of P comma message, receive of Q comma message. What it is? Sending message to P and the receiving message from Q. Okay. So if you observe here, there are two processes. What are those? P and Q. Okay. In this type of direct communication, there is only one communication link between the communication parties. That means there is only one link between the sending process and the receiving process. And that link must be shared by only two processes. And the next, there is only one link. There is only at most one link between the process. For example, there are two processes P and Q. They are willing to communicate with each other, so automatically there need to be one communication link to make the communication possible. So there should be no other links allowed in between the P and Q. There must be only one communication link and the two processes. So those are the conditions we need to consider. And next, one more thing is the link may be the bidirectional, a link may be unidirectional. So those are the points. These points we have already covered earlier. If you observe these double pointed lines, you are able to recollect. A link is associated with exactly two processes, right? And the second point is between each pair of process, there exists exactly one link. That means two processes, one link, and a link may be unidirectional or a link may be the bidirectional. Okay. This is about direct communication. Send P of message and receive Q of message. Send P of message means send a message to a process P. Receive Q of message means receive a message from a process Q. Okay. And next, coming to next one, next variety. This is another type of send and receive primitive. Send P comma message and receive ID comma message. That means we are sending a message to process P, receive ID comma message. Earlier it was receive Q comma message. Q means we are specifically mention the name of the receiver Q. But here in this particular way, so receive ID comma message. That is the difference between the previous one and this one. Okay. So in this type, receive ID comma message. That means we are not mentioning the receiver particular process name. That means we can receive a message from any other process, not from a particular process. Earlier, send receive q comma message. That means we are receiving the message from a particular process q. But here in this way, receive id comma message means we are receiving the message from any other process. Okay, so that is the difference between the previous one and this one. Okay, the next variety is indirect communication. So earlier two types of send and receiver comes under direct communication. The first one is send p comma message, that means sending message to p, and receive q comma message, that means receiving message from q. That is the first variety under the direct communication. And the second variety under the direct communication is send p comma message and send receive id comma message. Okay, so I will differentiate the things by using a paint. I can write so that you are little bit comfortable. Okay, what is the first one? In the case of direct communication, we have two varieties. What are those? The first one is send p comma message, and the second one is receive q comma message. Okay, so this is the first variety. What is the second variety? The second variety is send p comma message, receive
Receive ID comma message.
receive id comma message. So you need to observe the this portion and this portion. If you observe here, we are mentioning the process name where we are receiving the message, but here we are mentioning the id. That means we can receive message from any process, but here in this particular case we need to receive a message from a particular process q. That is the difference. So these two are comes under direct communication. That means we were mentioning the processes or at least the process id. It may be from any other process. But in the case of indirect communication, so what we need to do is we need to create a mailbox. That means we are sending a message to mail. We are sending a message to mail and we need to receive from the mail. So this is also a mail ID. That is a thing. That means in order to make the indirect communication possible, we need to do one thing. First, we need to create the mailbox. First we need to create the mailbox and send. Next one, send and receive. Send and receive from mailbox, and then we need to delete the mailbox. That means there is no direct communication between the processes. So earlier what we have done, we are sending a message to P directly. That means we are sending a message to the process itself. But in the case of indirect communication, so what we are doing, we are sending a message to the mailbox. Okay, so the receiver will receive the information from the mailbox. So there is no direct communication between the processes. Okay, the sending process will send a message to the mailbox and the receiver will get the message from the mailbox. That means in order to make the communication possible, we need to create a mailbox. Once we create a mailbox, so automatically send and receive will be done through the mailbox. Once we send the message and the receiver will receive the message from the mailbox, at the end of the communication, we can delete the mailbox. Sorry. Is it clear for you all? If you are comfortable, I will move to the next topic. Are you able to understand what is direct communication, what is indirect communication? You can respond via chat or you can respond via
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then. Thank you. Right. And next, the next topic, we move to the next topic. So these are the things what I said to you earlier. Create a new mailbox and send and receive messages through the mailbox, and then we need to delete the mailbox. So this is under indirect communication. So for up to this, we have concluded about naming. Under the interprocess communication, the first concept is naming, and the next one is a synchronization. So under the synchronization, so what we need to do? There must be some synchronization between the communication parties. So what is about synchronization? For example, there is a reader-writer problem. The reader and writer has some synchronization. Then only the reader is able to read the information after writer writing the information. So I will give you one example about the synchronization. So we already covered one concept called producer and consumer problem under shared memory. Producer and consumer problem, right? So this is the buffer, for example. Is there any item in the buffer now? So is there an item? For example, a buffer can hold 4 values, for example. By seeing this diagram, is there any item in the buffer? No. That
No,
means
ma'am.
consumer cannot consume the items until the producer produces an item. That means initially the producer has to produce the item, then only the consumer can consume the item. Okay. That means there should be some synchronization between the producer and consumer. So then only the producer and consumer can work cooperatively, right? If there is no there is no synchronization between the process, then we cannot work with such type of problem. That means after producing a item only, the consumer can consume the item. There are another variety that is called as reader writer. This is also another variety of a problem under the synchronization. So what it is, for example, I am the writer. The value of A. What is the value of A now? What is the value of A? I am writing
One.
the value of A. What is the value of A? I am writing. I am writing now. What is the value of A? What is the value of A? The value of A is 1, you said. But it is not true. Still I am writing. Now the value of 1 is 12. The value of 1 is 123. The value of 1 is 1234. So why? So for someone, when you are reading at this point, you might think that the value of A is 1. And some other reader reading the information when I am writing here. So automatically they may treat that the value of A is 12. You may treat that the value of 1 is A is 1. And some other reader is reading while I am writing 3. They might think that the value of A is 123. And some other reader is reading the information when I am writing 4. So obviously he might think that the value of A is 1, 2, 3, 4. That means, so each and every reader is reading in different times when I am writing the value of A, right? So why this particular problem happened? So why this particular problem happened is, while I am writing, the readers are reading. So while I am writing, the readers are reading. That is the problem. So that is why. So when the readers are allowed to read after the write operation, after write operation, readers should allow to read. So then immediately what I will do? So 1, 2, 3, 4. When I am writing the value of A, the readers are not allowed to read the information. So after that, by this I conclude. That means I am stop writing the value of A. So at that time, the readers are reading the value of A. So that what will happen? So for everyone, the value of A is 1, 2, 3, 4. That means there should be some synchronization between the writer and the reader. So writer has to read first. Sorry, writer has to write first, and then the readers are allowed to read the information. Okay, so that is you need to understand. That is called as synchronization. There should be some synchronization between the communication parties. Okay, what the communication parties will do? The communication party means sender and the receiver. What they will do? They will send the message and they will receive the message from the other process, right? So these are the four synchronization concepts and we need to talk about. The first one is a blocking send, non-blocking send, blocking receiver, non-blocking receiver. Blocking send means the sending process is blocked until the message is received by the receiver. For example, sender send a message and the sender will block up to what point the sender will block? Whenever the receiver receive the message, then the sender is unblocked. The sending process is blocked until the message is received by the receiving process. Right? So this is the first one. The sending process is blocked until the message is received by receiving process. And the next one is non-blocking send. Non-blocking send means the sender will continuously send the messages. Whether the receiver is receiving the message or not, sender will never block. The sender can send any messages, whether the receiver is receiving or not. That is called as non-blocking send. And the next one is a blocking receive. Blocking receive means the receiver blocks until the message is available. Okay, that means the receiver has to receive the message after the sender send a message. If the no message is available, then the receiver will block. That is called as blocking receive. And the fourth variety is non-blocking receive. What is non-blocking receive? The receiver will never block. If the message is not available, the receiver will read the null messages. Are you got my point? So there are four varieties. The first one is a blocking send, and the second one is non-blocking send, and the third one is a blocking receive, and the fourth one is a non-blocking receive. The first two are comes under sender side, and the second two are for receiver side. Blocking send, non-blocking send. Blocking receive, non-blocking receive. What is blocking send? First one. Blocking send means the sender will block until the receiver read the message. Non-blocking send means the sender will never block whether the receiver receives a message or not. Okay. And the third one is a blocking receive. Blocking receive means if the message is not available, then the receiver will block. Non-blocking receive means the receiver will never block even the messages are not available. If the messages are not available, the receiver may read null values. That means he is ready to receive the null value even the message is not available. So those are the four varieties under the synchronization. And the last topic under the message passing is buffering. So under the buffering, so as I told you, a buffer is a temporarily storage area. A buffer is a temporary storage area. There are mainly three varieties of buffer. The first one is a zero capacity, and the second one is a bounded capacity, and the third one is a unbounded capacity. So three varieties. Let me explain with the help of paint. So what are those? Under buffering, we have the first one is a zero capacity, and the second one is bounded capacity, that means bounded buffer, and third one is a unbounded buffer, right? So zero capacity means buffer capacity is zero. That means whatever the sender is sending, immediately the receiver has to receive the message. There is no buffer capacity. To keep the items into the buffer, there is no, to keep the message into the buffer, there is no capacity in the buffer. So whenever the sender is sending a message, that message need to be received by the receiver immediately. Okay, so that is the first variety, zero capacity. There is no buffer space to keep the message. Okay, and the next one is a bounded capacity. What is bounded capacity? That means there are, for example, in this particular buffer, we can keep 3 messages, 1, 2, 3. The sender will send a message to the buffer and the receiver will receive the message from the buffer. How many messages sender can send here? There is a limitation. In this particular example, the buffer capacity is 3. That means the sender can send the 3 messages, 1, 2, 3. So that automatically the receiver can receive the messages from the buffer. Bounded. Bounded means there is a limit. There is a limit to the buffer size. Here in this example, we have considered 3. So sender can send 3 messages to the buffer and the receiver can take the messages from the buffer. Okay. And next, one more thing here, if the buffer is full, if the buffer is full, but that means the sender is continuously sending the 3 messages and the buffer is full and the receiver is not yet receiving the messages. So what happened at that particular moment of time? When the buffer is full, the sender cannot send the messages until the buffer is full. The sender cannot send the messages if the buffer is full. When the sender is allowed to send the message again? When the buffer is empty. When the buffer will become empty? When the messages are received by the receiver, automatically these messages will be take off from the buffer. So whenever the receiver take off the message from the buffer, automatically the sender is allowed to send the messages again. So that is called as bounded buffer. So what is unbounded buffer? What is unbounded buffer? As the name indicates, unbounded buffer means unlimited. That means the sender can send any number of messages to the buffer, any number of messages, and the receiver can take out the messages from the buffer. This is receiver and this is sender. Any number of messages. Okay, there is no limit. There is no limit of the buffer. Zero capacity means when sender is sending something, the receiver has to receive it immediately. Right? And the second variety is bounded buffer. Bounded buffer means there is a limit in the buffer size. For example, 3. That means the sender can send only 3 messages. So after receiver is receiving those 3 messages, automatically one after the other, so automatically the buffer will become empty, so that the sender can keep the messages again. It is bounded buffer. And next, unbounded buffer means there is no limit. The sender can send any number of messages and the receiver can receive the messages from the buffer. Okay. Have you got my point? Are you got my point? So by this we can conclude, by these topics we can conclude inter-process communication. Okay. If you are comfortable, we need to move to the threading issues. Can I move to threading issues? Anyone please respond?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So before going to type here, right here, so let me show the thread diagram first, so that if you identify the thread diagram, then observe this diagram. So those blue lines are called as threads. The first process, first of all, what is a thread? A thread is a unit of a process. For example, there is a process called banking. So under the banking, we have so many modules. What are those? Banking, in the banking application, there is a withdrawal module, there is a deposit module, there is a balance inquiry module, and there is one more module called mini statement, right? So each and every module will be assigned to the individual thread, individually thread. So what happened? So we can run all the threads at the same time. Okay, threads. What is the purpose of dividing the process into threads? The purpose of dividing process into threads is for computational speed up. For computational speed up. So for example, the first one is a single threaded process. What a process consists of? A process consists of code area. A process consists of data. A process consists of stack. A process can use files. a process can store the information in the registers. So this is about a process. In this first diagram, we have only one thread, that is a single threaded process, and we are not dividing the process into unit of tasks. There is only one thread, there is only single control. But whereas in this particular second diagram, if you observe, there is a there are three threads, right? If you observe the diagram, so the code area, data area, and files of a single process is shared to three threads. That means the code area, data area, and files are shared to these three threads, and registers and stack are individual to the thread. Registers and stacks are individual to each thread. But all the threads of a one process can share code area, data area, and files. There is only one line if you observe here in this particular diagram. That means the first portion of a process is shareable to threads. So what I mean to inform you is a process can have a threads. Okay, thread is a nothing but part of a process. Okay, in this particular diagram, the second diagram, multi-threaded process consists of three threads. Those three threads can share the process information. What they can share? Code area, data area, and files. Okay, so why we are go for multi-threading? So we can run a process as a whole. We can run a process as a whole. What is the need for going to the dividing the process into unit parts, and what is the reason for it? So the reason is simple. If we divide the process into multiple units and multiple threads, so automatically all the threads can run at the same time, concurrently or parallelly, so that the computational speed up will be more. As the name indicates, thread consumes less number of system process, but a process consumes more number of system process. That is the reason why process is called as heavyweight and the thread is called as lightweight. Okay, process is called as heavyweight and thread is called as lightweight. So 1 second. Okay, excuse me, right? Where we are in the threads, right? Okay, what is the difference between a process and a thread? A process is a heavyweight process and thread is called as lightweight process. Why thread is called as lightweight process? Thread is a part of a process. Thread is a unit part of a process. Okay, so that thread consumes less system resources and process consumes more system resources. If you observe this particular diagram, this is single threaded. So it is called as a process. There is no threads. There is only one flow of control, one flow of execution. But here in this particular diagram, so a process is divided into multiple threads. These threads share the code, data area, and files of a process. Okay, process is a heavyweight and thread is a lightweight. That is the first point you need to understand. Why it is called as heavyweight and why it is called as lightweight. Why process is called as heavyweight? Why? Because when compared to threads, process consumes more system areas, more system resources. So I will justify this one. So for example, if a process is not divided into multiple parts and there is only one thread, one process, one flow of control. So what happened? In order to keep the entire process into the main memory, we require much memory. So but when compared to thread, process requires much memory. Thread is a part of a process. So obviously thread requires less memory. And next, a process requires more CPU cycles to complete its execution. Whereas coming to thread, as a thread is a part of a process, it requires less CPU cycles to complete its subtask. Why? Because the entire process we are divided into unit of tasks, right? Each and every unit of task is assigned to a single thread. All the 4 threads can run at the same time. So that to the at the same time means, for example, if it is a multiple processors, multi-processor system. What is multi-processor system? Multi-processor system means multiple processors are available. That means 4 CPUs are available or 3 CPUs are available. What we will do? We will assign each and every thread to individual CPU, so that all the 3 CPUs can take the different threads and they can run the threads at the concurrent level. So automatically the computational speed up is more. That means it thread takes less time for its execution. Single process takes more time to complete its execution. So that is the difference between a process and a thread. Thread is a lightweight because it takes less memory, less number of CPU cycles, and less time for the execution. Whereas coming to process is a heavyweight process. It consumes more system resources. Why? Because entire process we need to keep in the main memory, and in order to run the program from first point to last point as a whole, it requires much CPU cycles. Right? Because of that reason, process is called as heavyweight. And the next point is, when we are dividing the process into multiple threads, all the threads are sharing a process code area, data area, and the process files. Okay, that is what you need to understand. I already told you now, these are the benefits. Responsiveness means, so automatically we are multiple number of threads. If you have a multiple number of threads, if a one thread is not working, all the remaining threads can run parallelly, so that all the things, all the part of a unit, all the parts of a program, we can finish in a faster manner. That is the reason why responsiveness, that is called computational speed up. And the next one is resource sharing. I already told you that share the memory and the resource of a process which they belong to. Okay, economy. Already I told you a process takes much resources when compared to the thread. So thread is a lightweight process. So cost of executing the thread is low when compared to process. Why? Because process requires much CPU, more storage area, many CPU cycles, and next it takes less time to create a thread. It takes more time to create a process. So that is called as economy. And the next fourth point is utilization of multi-processor architecture. Multi-processor, I already told you na. So for example, there is only one process and there are multiple CPUs. What we can do? We can assign that particular entire process to the single CPU. So all the remaining 2 processors are idle. But if it is a multi-processor architecture, so what we can do, a single process is divided into multiple threads, so that the first thread is assigned to first CPU, the second thread is assigned to the second CPU, and the third thread is assigned to the third CPU. So automatically the 3 threads can run parallelly with the help of 3 processors, so that we can complete the task within a less time. Okay, so that is called as utilization of multi-processor architecture. That means if it is a multi-processor architecture, better we need to go for the threading concept, not a process concept. Okay, if it is a thread, if there is an availability of threading, and if we are dividing the process into threads, and if it is a multi-processor architecture, we can assign multiple threads to the multiple CPUs. So all the multiple CPUs run the multiple threads at the same time. Okay, and the next, how many types of threads are there? So there are 2 types of threads. The first one is a user thread and the second one is a kernel thread. User thread and the next one is a kernel thread. So as the name indicates, you no need to go for the entire slide. Okay, you no need to worry about all these white paragraph information. You no need to verify. Okay, you no need to remember. Just you need to remember these simple one: user thread and a kernel thread. There are 2 types of threads. The first one is user thread and the second one is the kernel thread. So as the name indicates, what is user thread? What is user thread means user threads are created in the user area. The entire main memory is divided into two parts. Na? The first part is for kernel and the second part is for user. So I don't want to show the PPT to you. So I will explain you with the help of paint so that it will be easy for you to understand, right? So how many types of threads are there? There are two types of threads. The first one is a user thread and the second one is the kernel thread. Okay, so what is user thread? As the name indicates, user threads are created by the user threads are created by the library in the user area. And there will be a library. With the help of library, we can create a thread in the user area. What is user area? It is main memory. So the main memory is divided into two portions. One is a kernel, that is operating system, and the second one is for the user area, right? So user level threads are created by the user in the user area. What about the kernel thread? Kernel thread is created by the kernel. Kernel thread is created by the kernel in the kernel area. That means creation of kernel thread. Creation of kernel thread is a responsibility of operating system. And next, creation of user thread. Creation of user thread is responsible of user. User creates user level threads. And next, operating system will create the kernel threads. That is the first difference. Okay, that is user thread, and the second one is the kernel thread. Okay, likewise, user create any number of threads in the user area, right? And the next one, what are the advantages and disadvantages of user level threads and the kernel threads? So user level threads are usually created fast and managed by the user. So they are very less time. They are very simple to create and it takes less time for the creation. Why? Because there is no kernel involvement. We no need to ask the operating system for the creation of user level threads. There is no kernel involvement. Directly the user can create the kernel. Okay, na? And the next one, there is a disadvantage of user level thread. So this particular disadvantage, drawback, you may not understand now. So when there is a diagram, when there is a variety of mappings from the user level to the kernel level, so at the time I'm explaining those things, those models, you are able to understand the disadvantage. First, understand the advantage. So user level threads are very simple to create and very simple to manage. Okay, why? Because they are created by the user, not by the kernel. So less time to create a user level thread. And the second variety of kernel is kernel level thread, and those are created by the kernel in the kernel space. That means in the operating system allocated space, right? And the next one, advantages of kernel threads. So kernel threads advantage also you are not able to understand, but the disadvantage you can understand. Slower to create and manage them by the user. Okay. Up to this point, what you have covered. So give me one second of time. I will plug the power. Right. So what is about user thread? User thread is created by the user in the user area. Simple. What is kernel thread? Kernel threads are created by the kernel in the kernel area. That is the first point. Simple. Right. And what is the next point you need to understand? The next point you need to understand is disadvantages of each. What is the advantage of user thread? The advantage of user thread is it is very fast to create and manage. whereas simple to manage. Whereas in the case of kernel threads are slow to create. So that is the disadvantage of kernel thread and advantage of user thread. And next, how many models of a kernel? So there are different varieties. The first one is one-to-one. One-to-one means or many-to-one. Many-to-one means for all the user level threads. These are the user level threads are assigned to single kernel thread. So these are user level and this is a kernel. How many are there? How many are there? Multiple user threads and only one kernel thread. That is the reason why many to one. Many to one means many user level threads to single kernel. Likewise, we have total 3 varieties, I think so. Many to one, and one to one. First variety is many to one model. What is many to one model? If you observe here, there are many user level threads. There is only one kernel thread. Okay. So what is the problem of many to one? What is the problem of many to one means? For example, if one user level thread send a block system call to the kernel, block system call means system call has to be run by the kernel. The system call code is not available in the user area. We already covered the concept in the case in system calls concept, right? All the system calls code is available in the kernel area. So whenever there is a block system call from one single thread, automatically, as there is only one kernel thread to handle the system call, all the remaining threads also blocked. That means if one thread send a block system call, automatically all the remaining 3 threads are blocked. Okay, na? That is a problem with many to one model. Okay, na? Why the remaining things are blocked? Why? Because there is only one kernel thread, right? Whenever this process send a block system call, automatically this thread will be handling that block system call. There is only one kernel thread. So automatically all the remaining 3 threads will be blocked. So that is the problem with many to one. Many to one. Why it is called as many to one? Many user level threads and one kernel thread. So many to one. That is the problem. If one thread sends a block system call, all the remaining threads will be blocked. And it's what about one to one? In order to avoid such a problem, we'll go for the next variety. That is called as for every user level thread, there is a kernel thread. First user level thread and next kernel thread. User level kernel level thread. Like that, each and every user level thread has assigned to individual kernel threads. So in this particular problem, in this particular model, we can avoid the previous problem. What is the previous problem? For example, if one user level thread send a block system call, automatically it won't create any problem to the remaining 3 threads. Why? Because the first user level thread will be handled by the kernel, this kernel. Automatically, this will be blocked. There is no other problem. There is no other problem for the remaining threads. So they run without any problem, without blocking. Why? Because they are assigning to the different kernels. So they won't block. If one user level thread send a block system call, all the remaining threads will run automatically without any problem. In the case of previous one, if one thread send a block system call, then automatically the remaining 3 threads block. Why? Because all the remaining 3 are also assigned to a single thread. That is the reason why if one thread send a block system call, automatically the remaining 3 are also blocked here. But in this particular diagram, each and every user level thread has its own kernel level thread. So automatically, if one process send a block system call, it won't create any problem for the remaining 3. Why? Because those 3 are allocated to the different kernel threads, right? Then the problem solved. Then what is the need for going for other model? So here also there is disadvantage. So for every user level thread, we need to create a kernel level thread. For every thread, we need to create a kernel level thread, right? So because of that reason, it is very costly, right? And the next one, third variety, many to many model. Many to many model is avoiding the drawbacks of many to one and one to one. What is the problem in many to many to many? In the case of many to many, there is a problem called blocking. So blocking means if one thread sends a block system call, automatically the remaining threads are also blocked. That is a problem in many to one. What is the problem in one to one? For every user thread, there is a separate kernel thread we need to create. Okay. So that is a problem. So more costly. In order to avoid such a problem, we go for many to many. That means many to many. For example, here we have 4 user threads, but only 3 kernel threads. That means not like one to one, not like many to one. Many user threads are available and many kernel threads are available. Kernel threads are always less than the user level threads. We no need to create individual thread for the individual user level thread. Okay, 4 user level threads are assigned to 3 kernel threads, so that if one thread is sending a blocking system call, so the remaining threads will not blocked here. Why? Because those 3 are assigned to the remaining 2 kernel threads. Likewise, we can solve the problems of many to one and one to one. Okay, that is about threading. Right? So with this we have completed threading, and the next one is a scheduling. Okay, scheduling we will talk in the afternoon session. I will take the session in the afternoon around 1:30 to 2:30. When will be your lunch break? Anyone respond? Are you there?
12:30 to
12:30, ma'am.
1:30, madam.
12:30 to 1:30. Okay. So I will ask your faculty. I will take if time if they are comfortable. So I'll ask them and I will take the class in the afternoon session. It might be the 1:30 to 2:30 or it may be the 2:30 to 3:30. So I will ask the faculty and I will take the slot. So I will share the things via WhatsApp. Okay. So I would like to explain you the thread concept again. So there are 2 types of thread, user thread and kernel thread. User level threads are created by the user in user area. That is the first point you need to understand. And kernel threads are created by the kernel in kernel area. This is one is simple to understand, right? And the next one, user level threads are created with the help of a library. I already told you. And next one more thing, they are very fast and simple to create. Fast and simple to create. User level threads are costly and then slow. That is the difference between user level thread and kernel level threads. And next one more point, there are different models. One is many to one. That means multiple user level threads are connected to a single kernel thread. So what is the problem? If one thread sends a block system call, automatically remaining 2 threads are also blocked. Why? Because there is only one kernel thread. One kernel thread is available. So in order to avoid this problem, what we went to one-to-one model. One-to-one. One-to-one means each and every user level thread has a kernel. Right? For example, it sends a block system call. Automatically what happened? So the remaining 2 won't block. Why? Because they are assigned to different kernel threads. Okay? How many number of user level threads are there? That many number of kernel threads has to be created. That is the problem with second model. In order to avoid this problem, and this problem, both the problems, in order to cover both the problems, we'll go to many to many. Many to many means many user level threads are connected to many kernel threads. Sorry. Each thread has.
Madam, next class started, madam.
Okay, Amma. Then leave. Okay. Go. We'll discuss in the afternoon class. Not a problem. Bye.